Hello friends, it's good to be back. How are you doing? Are you good? I hope so. I hope you're all very, very well. So I've made a couple of mental health related videos already with tips and skills to use and all that fun stuff. And I pretty much learned all of it from this therapy course that I did a couple of years ago called DBT, dialectical behaviour therapy. And I wanted to explain a little bit about what it is because I really feel like anyone could benefit from doing this therapy course, and I recommend it to everyone because I really feel like it's changed my life. Not to be dramatic, but I really feel like it has. So first of all, what is DBT? So DBT stands for dialectical behaviour therapy, and it's kind of like a version of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, but with a different focus. Dialectical means opposites, and DBT is about integrating and synthesizing things that seem to be their opposites. For example, the big one, the thing that they start you off with in the course, is acceptance and change. It's kind of on the one hand, you're I should accept who I am, and on the other hand, it's I should change everything about me. And you kind of learn at the very start of DBT that both of those things can be true. You can accept who you are and also recognize that you can change some of your behaviors to make your life easier or happier. That's the foundation of DBT is two opposing things can both be true, you know? So the other thing with DBT is that it's it is talk therapy. You are sitting in a room talking, but it's mainly focused on skills that you can use right now in your life to make things easier. It's less focused on talking about where your behaviors and thought patterns came from in the past, and more about how they are affecting you in the present and how you can make them healthier in the future. It's very sunny, I'm gonna get sunburned. One of the big things that I really love in DBT is the language that you use. And one of those things is not describing your thoughts or behaviors as bad, but just as unhealthy or unhelpful, or those thoughts and behaviors don't get me to where I want to be. They don't make me feel how I want to feel. Instead of being it's bad for me to feel angry, or it's bad for me to go on a bender. Going on a bender isn't bad, it's just maybe stopping you from being able to go to work, or it makes your skin break out, or whatever it is. It's not that it's bad, we're not judging your behaviors, we're just being this isn't giving me the life that I want, which I really like. I really like that outlook. So who is DBT for? I think that it honestly could benefit every person. I think that the things that DBT focuses on and the skills that it gives you, I think everyone could benefit from. I think everyone could use and everyone could work on. I think that everyone struggles sometimes with judging themselves and maybe behaving in a way that they don't really agree with or that isn't healthy for them. And also maybe struggling with recognizing what your emotions are and where they came from and how to interpret them. I feel everyone struggles with those things at some point, or to an extent. Historically, DBT started out as a treatment for borderline personality disorder, and it's still the top treatment for that. But I don't have BPD. I was never diagnosed with BPD, and I still loved DBT so much, and it still really changed my life for the better. So it's a group therapy program. Usually you can do it with just a one-on-one psychologist, but it's kind of meant to be done in a group. It goes for a year, usually. You can do it for a longer period of time if you want to, but the base program goes for a year. So I started doing it in Melbourne, and then I moved to Sydney halfway through. So I've done it at two separate places that ran it a little bit differently. So I've kind of gotten what the different experiences are like. So for both of them, there was a group session once a week. With the first place that I did it, I also had an individual psychologist that was with the program that I also saw once a week. And the sessions went for a whole day. It was 9 to 3 or something like that, maybe 10 to 3, with a lunch break in the middle and snack breaks. And in the second place that I did it, it was one afternoon. I think it went for 3 hours once a week, and there wasn't an individual psych along with it. So it was a less intensive version of the program. With the first place that I did it, we also got like a lot of homework, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed getting like worksheets to fill out and like think about throughout the week, because it's kind of like with uni where like once you've done the lecture, you forget about it, like it's out of your brain. So I really enjoyed that we were like encouraged to continue thinking about what we'd learned throughout the week, so that it was easier to like consolidate it and internalize it and all of those things. And the program is split into 4 modules that you can do in any order. And I'll explain a little bit about what the modules are as well. And we had parties at the end of every module. We would have like cake, like everyone would bring in some food, and we did like played games and stuff. And one time we watched Inside Out, and that was very cool. I love that movie. So the 4 modules that you go into in DBT are mindfulness, which is usually like the first one that you'll do. Then there's distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and emotional regulation. Mindfulness, number 1, it's just about like being aware of your thoughts pretty much, because you can't really change anything unless you know what's happening first. So the main like purpose of it, I guess, is to learn to be present in the moment without judging what's happening or judging yourself. I explained a little bit about this in my video about emotions, but like judging your experience just often makes it worse. Like if you notice that you're feeling angry and then you get angry at yourself for feeling angry, it just makes the anger go on for a lot longer and get a lot worse. It's really an important skill to be able to notice how you're feeling and what you're thinking and what you're doing without judging it, and being able to be like, oh, I just had the thought that all my friends hate me. Isn't that interesting? And then moving on and not thinking about it anymore. So the second one is distress tolerance, which is literally about tolerating distress. Like it's about being able to sit with discomfort without being overwhelmed or without like acting out or without running away. So a couple of like the skills that I learned to do with that is like slowing down your breathing, or putting on music that you don't usually listen to like snap your brain out of it, or like parking it, which is pretty much just being like, I am not going to think about this for the next 5 minutes, and then I will come back to it and deal with it. And you just like park it somewhere else and go about your day, and then you come back to it at a later time when you've like settled down a little bit. So distress tolerance, very important, very useful. The next one is emotional regulation, which is kind of about reducing how sudden and extreme your emotions are in reaction to things. And that can be any emotions, like not just ones that feel distressing, but it also includes like suddenly like feeling really in love with someone, or just suddenly feeling really like excited and impulsive, because those emotions can be just as detrimental to your life choices as like extreme sadness or extreme anxiety. And that's like part of emotional regulation, is recognizing that emotions aren't good or bad, it's just whether they are helpful to your life. Some of the skills that I learned with emotional regulation is like understanding and recognizing my emotions, understanding what they're there for, which is what my emotions video was about, knowing how to change them when they happen and when like it's not helpful to me. If I'm feeling super sad and it's stopping me from like going out and seeing my friends, knowing how to like get myself out of that mindset. And also hopefully just preventing those extreme distressing emotions in the first place by like living a healthy lifestyle, or knowing when to expect that you might feel extreme emotions and being able to like plan ahead for it. And the last one is interpersonal effectiveness, which is basically about maintaining positive relationships and handling conflict or like changes in relationships. So that can include like asking someone for something, or saying no to someone and creating boundaries, validating someone's feelings when they're talking to you, or how to like maintain your self-respect when you're in an argument with someone, just stuff like that. There's this one skill that I use all the time called Dear Man, which is an acronym. DBT loves acronyms, by the way. There's so many acronyms in this course. But it basically gives you a script that you can fill in for how to ask someone for something assertively without being too shy and being a doormat, or being too aggressive. And I use this script all the time. So So that's the first thing, is that like I've learned how to be more assertive because I have like a foolproof way to be assertive and like know that it won't come across as me being a doormat or being too aggressive. And I've also learned that I'm not responsible for other people's reactions. Like I've learned that if someone doesn't respond to me well, it's not necessarily my fault. First of all, they could just like be having a bad day, but also if they are just like a mean person, then that's not my problem. It doesn't reflect on me. I also just feel like I have more control over my emotions and my behaviors and my thoughts. People tend to say sometimes like, oh, I did this thing because I couldn't help myself. And now I can help myself. Because one of like the gifts that DBT has given me, it sounds like I'm being sponsored by DBT. One of the gifts that DBT has given me is that I have some distance between having the urge to do something or say something and acting on it. So I get like some space between that to think about whether this is something that will help me and whether this is something that I want to do and will reflect on the person that I want to be. I also gained a lot of compassion towards myself and my brain and my body, because I learned that every feeling that I have, every thought that I have, every behavior, action that I take has a purpose, and it like fulfills a need for me. So like if I'm self-destructive, it's not because I'm a bad person, it's because those behaviors served a purpose for me at some point in my life. Like they were necessary. And now that I don't need those behaviors anymore, maybe I can learn new ways to deal with my emotions in a healthy way. And I'm also just like happier. Like I'm happier in general because I've learned to prioritize my mental health and my physical health. And I'm just nicer to myself. It feels good. When I started this course, it was the first group therapy that I'd done. And I think that a lot of people don't really know about group therapy, don't really talk about it. Like it's not really something that a lot of people do. And I didn't really know what to expect. And it's different for every group therapy. Like they're all structured differently. But basically for this one, for DBT that I did, we just kind of like, you know, sat in a room with our facilitator, as in like the therapist that's running it. We all sit in a circle. We've all got our like folders out that we can take notes in and put our worksheets in. We, at the start of the day, did like a check-in, like you just go around the room and be like, how are you feeling today? Yeah, cool. We would then do some mindfulness every day, which was usually like a scripted meditation where everyone like closes their eyes and you're like, imagine your thoughts are the leaves falling down from the tree onto the river, and then the river floats them away, which is very nice. Or we would go for a walk as a group and do some outdoor mindfulness stuff. We would go to a park and look at the trees and look at the buildings and notice what we could hear and what we could smell and stuff like that, which was always fun. Then we would do an introduction to the skill that we were going to be learning for that day. We'd usually get like a worksheet explaining it a bit, and we'd like talk about like the basics of it. And then we would have a break. We would have a snack break. Love a good snack. And then in the middle of the day, we would get more into it and talk about like examples of when we can use it and like difficulties that might come up when we're trying to use this skill. And that would go for like a couple of hours. And then we would have a lunch break. Then after lunch, we would usually like chill out a bit. We would do something like a little bit less intense mentally and emotionally. Like we might like play a game or like, I don't know, something that's a bit less like deep. And then at the end of the day, sometimes we'd do another mindfulness, and then we'd check out, you know, go around the room again, say how we're feeling, and maybe like something nice that we were going to do for ourselves when we got home. And that was it. So in terms of like the group therapy of it, there's a few reasons that I really enjoyed it and a few reasons that I didn't enjoy it so much. The main good things for me were like noticing that other people are having the same experience as me. Like it's so validating to hear other people explain their experience and be like, wow, I thought I was the only one that felt that way and had those thoughts and did those things, but I'm not. Because it can be quite hard, like, you know, trying to change your behaviors that are so ingrained in you. And it's nice having other people that are going through the same thing. Like it's nice to check in the morning and be like, I had a hard time with this skill this week, and other people be like, oh my god, same. And also it can be really helpful to hear other people's stories and hear other people being like, I did this and this is how it turned out and it wasn't good, and then be like, okay, I can learn from their experiences. I can make sure that that doesn't happen to me. The bad things, in my experience anyway, was group dynamics can be really hard, especially when like you're in therapy. Like everyone's got their own shit that they're dealing with. Personalities clash, and that's just gonna happen. Like it's gonna happen anywhere. I also kind of had a couple of group members over the couple of years that I did it that weren't committed to the process, and that really affected everyone else. There was one guy who like kept coming in. I think he was drunk. I think he was he said that he was on a really high dose of Valium or something, but I think that he was just drunk, and he kept like falling asleep during the sessions, which was obviously very distracting for everyone, and he would snore. It was just like kind of rude and disrespectful because people are here like bearing their souls. And there's also then people who like feel like they're being forced to be there, and maybe they are being forced to be there, I don't know, who just feel overwhelmed and frustrated. I've had sessions where people have just like stormed out of the room, which can be quite distressing. But luckily, like you're literally there with a therapist, like they know how to handle it. So it's like, it's okay. And the other thing is that like, you don't get that personalized attention that you would get if you were doing it just with a one-on-one therapist. There might be specific situations in your life that you want to bring up and get help working through and seeing what you should be doing in those situations. But there just isn't time for everyone to go through everything that they want to talk about, which like, it's lucky that at the first place I did it, I did have as well an individual psychologist that I could talk through that stuff with. But at the second place, I didn't have that. So I just, you know, sometimes had to figure it out on my own, which is fine. And which is like the best way to build skills and problem solving. It was also quite hard at times to do this therapy for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it takes a while to see results, and this is like common across the board with this therapy and probably with a bunch of other therapies as well, that like you're constantly working on stuff. It took about 6 months or even a year after I started to start seeing the results in my life, to start seeing like changes that I could notice. And that's really hard at the start because you're like, I'm doing all this work and nothing's changing and I don't feel any different. But it really just like takes that long for your brain to start shifting and for your life to catch up to the changes that you're making. And on a more like biological sense, not to get too sciencey because I don't really understand science very well. Your brain has neural pathways that it knows really well and that they're just like stuck in there. And then it takes time and practice for your brain to make new pathways. So you can't really expect to like start therapy and then a week later be behaving and feeling completely different. Like it really takes time for it to sink in, which can be hard to like keep that commitment and motivation at the start until you start seeing results. And the other thing is that it really is constant. Like you're working on a new skill every week, and you're also trying to work on every other skill that you've learned up until that point all the time. And you're just like constantly like overthinking everything that you're doing and saying and feeling. And it can be really exhausting. Like sometimes you just want to like switch it off and not think about it and not have to analyze everything that you do. And it's okay to take a break. A lot of the time in our check-ins every week, people would be like, I didn't work on anything this week because I just really needed a break from analyzing my every move and my every thought. And that's fine. I think as long as you're still overall committed to like having a healthier life and like living the life that you want to live, then that's fine. It's fine to take a break. It can just be like, yeah, a bit overwhelming at times. But overall, I really credit DBT with changing my life. I think completely differently. I think like healthier priorities. I know what my priorities are now. I know what I value. It's really helped me a lot with all kinds of relationships, like with my family, friends, work, and like romantic relationships as well. I just feel like a much happier and more like aware person. Like I feel like I'm a lot more in tune with myself, which is always a plus. So if you're interested in trying it out, you can talk to your GP and probably get a referral for a program, or you can also find psychologists who are trained in DBT, so they might not do the full like structured program with you, but they might be able to like use like the language and the principles of it to do like talk therapy with you, which is also great. So that's pretty much it. Let me know if there's anything else you want to know about it. I love talking about it. I love telling people about this amazing program because I really think that like pretty much everyone could benefit from it. I feel like the skills they teach you should be taught in like school. Like it's just so useful, it's so helpful. I hope as always that you're being safe, taking care of yourself, being kind to yourself and to others. And I will talk to you later. Bye!